Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Traffic Safety Committee. I'm going to just read a starting statement here. This open meeting of the Traffic Safety Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on March 19th, 2023. All members of the Traffic Safety Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The Act allows for the Traffic Safety Committee to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream to this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed in the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Rachel?
Here.
Kate?
Here.
Chris?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
And staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Scott?
Present.
Chief Liver?
Present.
Megan?
Here.
Okay, a few ground rules here. The chair will invite each speaker or applicant on the agenda by name to make a presentation and speak to their application. Participants will provide their full name and hold until their name is called. Each speaker will be asked to mute their phone or computer when not speaking and to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. Those responding will be asked to wait until the floor is yielded to them by the chair. Speakers who wish to respond to the comments of others do so through the chair, taking care to identify themselves. For members of the public, the chair will afford public comment as follows. By phone, dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be recognized by the chair. Please note that part of your phone number will be visible to those viewing the meeting. By Zoom, click Raise Hand on the button on your screen and wait to be recognized by the chair. The chair will ask each member of the public who wishes to speak to identify their name and address only. Once the chair has a list of all public commenters, the chair will call each by name and afford 3 minutes for any comment. So we are going to change around the agenda a little bit. Chief Liver has a commitment that he has to get to, so we're going to move that. Actually, I'm going to bump that up to the first item. Chief Liver, if you are ready, sir. Nope, you're still on mute.
Well, thanks. Based on the conversation that we had, one of the comments that you made was you were aware that I had made a comment that I had been asking in a supplemental budget request for a while to hire 2 additional police officers with the intent to start a traffic enforcement unit. I want to make it clear that every police officer on this department knows that one of our priority quality of life issues that we address here in Northborough is traffic complaints. We can't be everywhere at every time, and it's traffic enforcement is, while a priority, it takes a backseat to 911 calls, medical emergencies, traffic arrests, and other patrol activities and calls for service. And we, on the day shift, usually have no more than a patrol supervisor and 2 officers. And it leaves them very little time, or shall I say uncommitted time, to do proactive things that I wish we could do more of, such as traffic enforcement. And my goal was, I don't think I'll see it come to fruition unless it happens before December 31st, which it isn't, is to attempt to get 2 additional officers to bolster our traffic enforcement and with the dedicated traffic enforcement officers. And that doesn't mean we're going to hire 2 people and that's all you're going to do is traffic. It's 2 positions that will allow us to have a person. I'm looking at between 6 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, and say noon until 6. There was a little bit of overlap midday, and that would give us almost close, at least 14 hours of dedicated traffic enforcement, where one officer on the day shift and into the 4 to 2, actually it would be the midnight shift as well, the last couple hours of that shift, which is the peak start of our morning commute traffic, and then in the evening that would provide coverage there, and one officer that with adding one to on each of the ends of the daytime period would allow us to have the 2 scheduled officers and the supervisor, and then one officer that's not allocated to taking calls. That function would be for the 8 hours that day is to do traffic enforcement. And that would allow us to actually be effective with our STEP program, which is a selective traffic enforcement program. And that takes into account citizen complaints, requests for enforcement, and more heavily, it's based on where have we had accidents and what are the causal factors of the accident. So one of my supervisors in charge of our traffic programs, and he does a quarterly review of all crashes and accidents and updates a list where accidents are happening, what are the more common causes, and at what time of the day during the day they happen. And we do a chart with locations and times where if officers have uncommitted time, that's where they're supposed to be. So that would really complement that program and actually make it much more effective, because again, as it stands now, it's the officers are expected to do that time permitting. So, and I'm not going to mislead anybody here. The fact that we'd have an extra body, I don't want to use the word extra because we never have extra here, no matter what shift it is if that officer is, say, doing traffic enforcement on Bartlett Street at Lyman and a medical emergency comes out of the high school, he's not going to sit there and not go. When they're close, they're going. And it would be for like higher priority calls. I'm not going to have someone sitting there running a radar when I get an officer yelling for a backup or, a high risk call. So, but that would be, it would be made very clear that that's the intent and the assignment for those officers during that time period is traffic enforcement. It's sorely needed. And it's when the conversations shift to staffing, it's a difficult subject. It obviously it's expensive.
Yep.
But I think that is probably the most proactive way that we can address the complaints that we have. Again, every officer when they're working is expected to do traffic enforcement, and that would not alleviate the other people working days from doing that as well, or either one of those 2 shifts, because they know what my expectation is. I expect aggressive traffic enforcement, and on average we do over 500 citations a month, and that's with just what we have now. That's not with dedicated personnel. So that would, one of my thoughts was to have this committee kind of kick that around, and if it's something that might want to be one of the recommendations to the board, that would be great support to the police department's efforts. But I think it's a direct way to address a lot of the residents' concerns.
Right. No, I completely agree. You had brought this up when we were first even just talking about this committee. I remember you bringing it up in that last meeting, and then you brought it up again in the first one, which sort of brought it to the front of my mind. So I wanted to make sure that we got this out there. I do agree. To me, enforcement, you can't have any rules without enforcement, right? Then they're not rules, they're guidelines. And so, I, for one, wholeheartedly would agree with this. I think a lot of the things on our list and a lot of the things I see on social media and a lot of the complaints we receive, I think would be resolved with this. My only question would be, I know you'd have the 2 officers. Is there additional vehicles that would need to be part of this as well? or
No.
you think you have enough vehicles to handle this?
We have enough. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It would put a little extra mileage on a couple of the cars, but we actually have 2 dedicated traffic vehicles. They're both unmarked. I mean, they're set up like a cruiser. They have cages and everything else in them, and they got antennas on the roof. But one's an Explorer and one's an F-150. And
Right.
The F-150 is like shooting ducks in a pond. So.
Are there any other members who have any comments on this?
Bill, I'd just like to reiterate what you said. I have worked with towns that have dedicated traffic and safety officers, and the knowledge they brought to certain projects, it was unmatchable, honestly. And they had a lot of less traffic and safety issues because of the dedication to it. And someone was able to be there.
Yeah.
So I support it as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Rachel?
I totally agree. You know me from Bartlett, enforcement is a huge issue for us, so I won't beat a dead horse with that. I guess my question is, the chief, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the agenda. Are there areas in town that you're concerned about from an accident standpoint? And are there things we can do besides staffing, whether it's signage or redesign, to sort of proactively?
I mean, our data doesn't lie. It's the accidents are where the accidents are, and the hot spots in town are Church Street, Main Street, Hudson Street, South Street, in that order. And those are accidents that usually result in significant property damage and or personal injury. There are other accidents on other streets. When you look at the statistics, that like, oh yes, there might have been 5 at Lyman Street, at Bartlett Street, but they're usually rear end collisions, people stopping at the stop sign, starting to pull out, and the car behind them pulls out, and the first car stops, and it's a fender bender, but it's still recorded as an accident. The aqueduct causes the statistics on Hudson Street to go up. The bridge has never been raised nor the street lowered, and I just don't know why a professional truck driver driving a 11-foot high box can't read a sign that says 10 feet, and you just can't fix stupid, I guess, sometimes. But
They can't do it in Westboro either.
No, Westboro as well.
So,
yeah.
But those are the areas. Clearly, yes. Would I like to spend more time down on Bartlett Street? Yes. And that's not just because you're on Rachel. I'm sensitive to the concerns down there. I do believe it has gotten much better. I think the number of trucks have a certain company's trucks have dropped off considerably. And well, I shouldn't say that. The contract drivers from other companies that deliver to that company have, through education from the business, has resulted in a lot of I think a significant drop. I mean, I go down there and I sit there because I'm not going to talk about something that I haven't gone down and looked at firsthand. And like I said, it still needs to be done because the speeds on Bartlett Street are too fast. So
no, I agree. I just, Bartlett Street, even though it's near and dear to my heart, is not the only place in town. So sort of overlaying the accident data with the agenda would sort of help us prioritize in terms of the areas that we need to concentrate on.
Yep.
That was just my.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think to Rachel's point, I think at some point we will want to, request that data, on an ongoing basis from you and your department.
Yeah, I had actually started to print it up, and I thought that I could maybe through Scott forward that info to him, and he can share it with the committee.
That would be great.
So that you'll have. It's very easy. It only takes me a few minutes. I just put in accidents, and I put town-wide, and it gives a chart and a graph and lists the streets and the number of accidents, and then what caused, what the violations were, if there were any. I can do the same thing with citations. How many citations on the street? things like that. But which I would have to explain because the way we classify things doesn't always reflect what the actual action was. So, because we have verbal warnings, written warnings, we have non-investigated crashes, we have, so it's I'd have to give you an explanation so you could actually figure out what the actual picture was.
Yeah.
It's just the way our software works.
Go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, I forgot I was muted. Always happen. Thank you. Chief, I was also going to request the accident data, but so I'm not too repetitive. Can we talk about the citation data for a second?
Sure.
I know you said you're leaving at the end of December. Would it be possible for, I forget, do we have a meeting in December or no?
We are doing monthly meetings, so there will be one in December. Yes.
Right. Okay. I mean, would it be possible to go over to do that sort of introduction to the data then? Or is that too quick a turnaround?
No, God, no. For the next meeting?
Yeah.
No, I mean, you wait 10 minutes, I'll give it to you now. It's like, yeah, we can definitely do it.
Sweet. The only other question I had was sort of the things you've been doing for enforcement now. Like I know that there was a radar trailer.
Signboard.
Thank you. Over on Summer Street by the railroad tracks. Just have like what statistics do we have on what, if any, effects those had on?
They have an immediate effect on the cars that are going too fast. When they see the sign flash, your speed is 45 and the speed limit on Summer Street is 25.
Right.
And you can see what, I always referred to as the dip. The front end goes down and people slow down and they stay slow for a little while. They get past the sign, they look around, there's no police around, and they usually go back up to where they were. But on Summer Street, by the time they get to Church Street where that sign is located, it pretty much keeps them down. It does dampen the traffic. I've watched it firsthand. It's happened to me. We all get carried away sometimes. So I know when I come into into work on Church Street some days and they got the sign right up by Crawford, you're coming off at 290 and you hit a 35-mile-an-hour speed zone. And it's like, oh yeah, there's the sign. So yeah, it's not good for me to do that. So, but we're all human.
Honesty is important.
Yeah,
I do it all the time. I'm not gonna lie. That's all I had.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Kate, I know you had your hand up there for a second.
Yeah, I don't know where it went. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm a huge supporter of the police department. I don't think that's a secret to anybody. But I did just want to point out that I did a little looking around online today and found a number of departments that are in towns that are the same size as Northborough or similar who have dedicated traffic enforcement officers. So I think it's a great idea.
it's not like it's a new subject.
No, and it's
really hasn't
not like
hit the public
there
forum.
are enough police officers in town either. So
Right. Great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate your time.
I have a little time to stick around in case something.
Okay. Whenever you need to drop, it's fine.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Okay. Next item on
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, sir.
For the December meeting, I would like to have, well, I don't even want to, I hesitate to call him Lieutenant Griffin, but join the meeting as well, since he's going to be taking my place.
Absolutely.
So he needs to meet you all and know what we're talking about. And he had an obligation tonight as well. So, but thank you.
Yep. No, definitely. And, sorry to see you go, but I hope you enjoy your retirement. It's well deserved and well earned.
It's 46 years in coming.
Wow.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is approval of the October 17th, 2023 minutes. Did anyone have any amendments or changes they needed to make to the minutes? No? Did everyone get a chance to look at the minutes? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes, Mr. Chair?
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Roll call vote. Rachel,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. That is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, now we get into the meat of the meeting. So this is going to be a little awkward or a little different, only because this is our first time going through this. So I appreciate everyone who put in something for us to go over. I know that there is a lot of pent-up demand for traffic issues here in town. That was the reason for the committee being created in the beginning. So what I am going to ask is we'll go through each of these one at a time. If you are the person who submitted it or you want to speak to it, to the item, I would say, raise your hand. I think it's *9 if you're on a phone or in the Zoom meeting. We'll try to call in as many as humanly possible. I would ask that we keep the comments per person to about 3 minutes so that we can give everyone a chance to talk about each item. And we'll try to keep it, I'm thinking we keep it to like three to five people at most for each item. I don't want to go an hour long on each one of these items. We'll never get through it. And then what I'm going to ask is that Chief Liver, if you're here, or Scott, just give us you are the professionals, right? You're the staff. You're the ones who know about these items. And so we're going to rely on you on is it feasible? Is it something that the town can legally do? Because if it's something we can't legally do, then, it moves it a little bit lower in the priority list. Because then we've got to change laws, which is not something I think this committee is going to be able to do very quickly. So we're going to.
Any of us can get the legislature to do quickly on anything.
That's very true. So we're going to rely on you to sort of guide us on that. And I think that's all I have to say on that. Chris.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it on the nose. With a lot of these requests, there is a lot of engineering studies that go in behind it. That different traffic signal warrants, stop sign warrants, and stuff like that. So it's usually not as easy. It's just traffic signals are very expensive to install. So that's just something we kind of got to keep in mind. Yeah, we can't. We're not going to have the authority really around and traffic signals or whatever. And I know the DOT has a new intersection control evaluation that every state-owned intersection, if you're changing like a connecting road to the intersection, that would have to go through. So it is a process, and it is something that we're going to have to consider a lot.
Right. Yeah. And I think this is going to be an education for us as well as an education for, everyone putting in requests, and we're all going to be learning. So with that being said, I guess we'll get to the first one. So the first one was a request for and actually there are 3 here with the same type of requests, for a heavy commercial vehicle exclusion for Summer Street.
So I can go over this quickly, and just to echo or to expand on something that Chris indicated, in Northborough, just because it's a state numbered route doesn't mean it's a state highway. We have Main Street, Route 20 throughout town, including Southwest Cutoff and West Main Street, are state owned roads, and West Main Street from Times Square over toward Ward Hill, that's also a state owned road. So those are the state owned roads. South Street, Route 135 is not a state owned road. That is a state numbered, locally owned road. So just to kind of put it in context on what Chris outlined about regulatory limitations we have.
Okay.
So we do have 3 heavy commercial vehicle exclusion requests on the agenda. There are
Okay. I'll open it up to members of the committee. Brian.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It seems to me that that's one of that's a route that Google Maps recommends to drivers. I'm guessing that's a large part of that problem. If you're coming from, say, the area of town over by Barbarian or Route 9, are there other routes? You know what? Are there other routes like that on this list? It seems like that would cause a number of these headaches.
Probably.
Through the chair, item C, Lincoln Street, that is likely a GPS route. If you're coming off of 290 and you need to get on Route 20 westbound, I'm guessing GPS would send you down Pleasant, down Lincoln, over to 20, and vice versa. So that's another one of those routes. I don't believe the Rice Ave item B on the agenda would be any GPS shortcut, but there's other reasons for that one I can discuss in a minute.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other comments from members? Kate?
I just wanted to know if there was any consideration as to what the additional truck traffic might do to the already congested center of town.
No, we did not include a queuing analysis at that traffic light. In order for us to do that, that would be a pretty extensive traffic count collection. That's a complicated set of intersections. They're timed together, so that would require counts at Hudson Street, West Main, South, West Main, Church, West Main. It would be a lot of counts.
So I think that would be my main concern. I can certainly appreciate the residents on Summer Street. not wanting trucks. I used to live in that area, so I'm familiar with it. I would just be concerned about the additional traffic, especially in the afternoon, evening rush hour.
To build on that, Kate, is when you look at the turning radius, and I can send this. I mean, you don't have to make a decision tonight. I can send you guys the reports. In order for that tractor trailer to take a right from South Street onto Route 20, they take up both lanes. So that truck is in a optional left or right lane, which is the right lane. Only in Northborough do you take a left in a right lane. But when you're in that right lane, that tractor trailer needs to take over the left lane completely in order to make that turn onto a Main Street, a right-hand curve. So like they always say, tractor trailers turn wide. Well, he takes over the entire lane.
So that would be taking over for all of the vehicles that are going to turn left to go to 290 or the other direction on Route 20.
That's correct. That's the biggest queuing issue that I could see there.
Yeah. And I think the other issue is that the, that left lane is supposed to be left turn only. So that truck is moving into that left-hand turn only lane to make a right turn.
You're allowed to do that.
Right.
Have his blinker on, but people will still go on.
Yeah,
the right
people
of
will
them.
still go right to the right of him, right? That would be my concern.
The problem is when he can't, like in the morning when he can't do that, he just sits there and sits there and sits there. And nobody's going to let him go when they're on the left lane taking a left because they got to get to Dunkies. So
Our new traffic safety officers could.
put him at 4 West Main Street, Chief.
Substation.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry. Anything else on the South Street?
Any other members?
I would just add that trucks do turn right there now. It would probably be more an increase, but yeah, I mean, it's not like trucks don't come up there and don't turn right. I've seen them.
Right.
And most of them do turn left to access Church Street.
Rachel.
Is there any concern that they might be using like Brigham Street or School Street? Would they ever move to different residential roads in that area instead of using 135?
I don't know. If I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Brigham Street is going to be I think they would take Brigham Street once.
I was just going to say, not
never again.
once.
I don't want to see a tractor trailer coming the other way on Brigham Street.
Right. I mean, that's my concern. If they're just going to use a different residential road, if we have this, that would just be my only concern about it.
Right. I mean, I would think they would go further up Route 9 to Lyman, but again, we can't ask Westboro to do that.
Right.
Okay. I think are we done with this one?
I just want to one thing that even though you might have a heavy vehicle truck exclusion, rather, that does not stop all trucks. Vehicles making deliveries, oil trucks, UPS trucks,
right,
landscape vehicles. It doesn't, dump trucks. If you got a trailer truck making a delivery of a moving van picking up at a house, you're exempt. So.
Yep. Okay, good. I guess we'll go on to, I don't see any members of the public with any hands up, so I guess we'll move on to the next one. Another heavy commercial vehicle exclusion for Rice Ave between Whitney and Allen.
So we had a request from 2 residents previously. One was a while back, and then one was a little more recent, with concerns about truck traffic on Rice Ave. We asked Central Mass Regional Planning Commission to do some traffic counts. They did 2 sets. They did one between Whitney and Allen, and the other one between Allen and Colburn. They require dual sets. So, for example, if we had done Summer Street, we needed to do both sides of Summer Street. You don't want tractor trailers turning at that 4-way.
Right.
So we got the counts that met the 5% threshold. Again, we had an engineering study performed by the same firm that did the Summer Street one. The thing that's complicated about this Rice Ave location is all the truck exclusions around it. So there's a truck exclusion on Whitney Street from Church Street all the way up to Coolidge. So trucks can't go there. There's a weight restriction on the bridge, on Whitney Street Bridge, right before Anzo's. There's a weight restriction there due to the bridge capacity.
Right.
So if there was a truck exclusion on Rice Ave, when a truck comes up Winter Street, he can't go left, can't go right, can't go straight. So he just parks there, lives there, or he backs up down Winter Street, which is not a very comfortable road to be backing a tractor trailer down. So the recommendation was you include Winter Street because that's logical. So a tractor trailer comes up Allen Street. Well, he's got nowhere to go. Can't go right. So you do a truck exclusion on Allen Street. And then you get one coming up Colburn, but when he gets to Barefoot, he can't go right or left because he's going to hit a weight restriction bridge. He's going to hit a truck exclusion the other direction. So you do Colburn as well. So this is one of the anomalies with truck exclusions that when you start looking at alternate routes and you have exclusions or weight restrictions elsewhere, you end up excluding an entire neighborhood at times. And sometimes it's not a neighborhood. It's a legitimate roadway. Tractor trailer on Hudson Street every one of them would have to take a left on that one coming down. But again, I do have a study, a report that's prepared, and we can send it out to the committee for consideration. It outlines all these criteria and limitations, but it's important for the committee to know there are implications on other roadways when this is considered.
Yep, agreed. I live on Whitney Street, so I'll hold my comments till the end. Any members have comments about this?
Scott, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Rachel.
The trucks that are going this way, are they doing that to avoid the aqueduct where they keep hitting the
No, usually they come in down. Well, if they're inbound off 290, they're usually taking a left up onto Allen Street to East Main Street to get to Route 20 or Bartlett Street.
Okay.
If they're coming out of the center of town, they're not going to get very far. They'd have to turn onto River Street.
I think a lot of the trucks that were counted were more local service vehicles, landscape trucks, box trucks, oil trucks. There really isn't a lot of commercial or commerce need on that roadway. The counts capture axles, so they don't really capture, is it a landscape truck? It's 6 axles. So I'm not sure why I know when the resident reached out to us, it was specifically about landscape trucks, box trucks, loud trucks that make a lot of noise rattling around, which is generally, not a tractor trailer.
Okay, Rachel.
Well, that sort of answered my question. I guess my question was, do we know if if they're not tractor trailers, it doesn't really relate, but do we know if the trucks are from industrial zones, warehouses that are in town where we can reach out directly to the warehouses, or are they coming from other places?
I really don't know. I mean, I don't know. There's a host of possibilities. Again, I've been on there. We paved Rice Ave recently. We've done some intersection work there, a lot of tree work up and down. I don't remember ever seeing a tractor trailer there. Landscape trucks up and down there constantly. I don't really remember seeing, some of the larger warehouse type traffic there. I'm not sure, Chief, if you've had any issues there other than the tractor trailers.
We went through a phase where trucks were trying to get around the Whitney Street exclusion coming off of Church Street, and some of them found their way down Howard Street and turned right onto Winter Street and would turn left to access the far end of Whitney Street, and we're continuously damaging the rock wall to the people that live on the corner. I've spent a good amount of time with them, and some of these trucks can't make the turn, so they end up, their only option is to go straight on Rice Ave, and that I've seen happen because there's no exclusion there. So and they, if they don't know what GPS will take them out to Colburn Street to Barefoot Road, and where they can take a right, but there's a bridge restriction that was never there before. But that's something the state just kind of put up there about, what, 3 years ago, Scott?
Yep.
With no notification to the town.
No, we were told by I think it was one of your officers that called and said, "Hey, by the way, oh, thanks for letting me know, DOT."
Which includes school buses, by the way.
Yep, and plow trucks.
Is that all, Rachel?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay.
Yeah, that was it. I was just, because we've, with Amazon, and we've had sort of direct conversations with them, so it might be something to consider for Barefoot Road as well.
Yeah.
That was it.
And I think most of these studies, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, you said that they count the axle, so they're not actually looking at
Right.
what type of truck it is, right, or even a name on it.
Correct. Yeah, you'll see all the counts when I send out the report. You'll see all the counts. There's specific classifications for each vehicle.
Okay. Chris.
Scott, do those reports also have like alternative routes laid out in them too, or is that
Yeah.
okay? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because that, like you said, we want to see too, how does it affect the surrounding neighborhoods? Because if you put a truck exclusion up one spot, how is that gonna? What's that recoil effect look like? Because it could do more damage than it does good.
Right.
Long run.
Yeah, you end up chasing your tail with truck exclusions everywhere, and all of a sudden, all the trucks are dumped on Babcock, and
Right.
that's not good.
Well, just make the whole town a truck exclusion, so they just have to go right by on 495.
Right.
What's your 90?
Somehow I don't see Mass DOT approving that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have to
I
keep
do
it.
have to head out. I apologize.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. I
Thank you.
appreciate your time.
And feel free to email me or call if there's any questions that don't get resolved that should have come from me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott, I don't know, and I don't know if this is possible too. It's just another thought. I mean, it could get a little bit tricky, but I guess any like slight geometric changes to the road that would kind of deter tractor trailers and 18-wheelers away from any of these roads. Would that at all be possible? I know it's kind of tough, but it's just kind of like a thought, kind of like a deterrent.
Yeah, the easiest thing to implement there are lane narrowing.
Yeah.
Bring it when there's curbing. When you rebuild the roadway, you bring the curbing in tighter. You put bump outs. You just make it physically uncomfortable for a truck driver to go down it, and that captures your repeat drivers. Landscapers are still going to go there because they got to mow the guy's lawn. But when a truck, like we were saying earlier with Rachel's question, once a 53-foot tractor trailer drives down Brigham Street once, they're never going again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say I live in that area. I live about not that far from the bridge with the weight restriction. And I would say probably at least once or twice a week I see a semi go down Whitney Street, towards that bridge, just, not even looking at the weight restriction signs. So, I'm not even sure, that, and this sort of goes back to the enforcement question, right? Is, can we can enforce those, the heavy vehicle weight, vehicle exclusions, but that we would need the help with the police department to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, if there's nothing more on that, is there any public comment? Seeing nobody even, I don't see anyone in the attendees list at all. So I know, Scott, you did send out the invitation to all the the people who had originally put in these requests, correct?
When we get the, well, there's because this is the first meeting, there's sort of two sets of requests.
Mhm.
Ones that are kind of aging. These are the ones I'm discussing now.
Okay.
The more recent ones you see down the list, the horizontal geometry, the stop sign, those we responded and said, this is being put before the Traffic Safety Committee for consideration. Here's the link to the webpage. So they've been made aware. Some of these other ones, I mean, like I said, it takes a year plus to get a truck exclusion report done. So these have been in the works for a while.
Okay. I appreciate that. So why don't we discuss Lincoln Street?
Okay, Lincoln Street, items C and D on the agenda can kind of be taken together. We mentioned Lincoln Street earlier. It's a cut through. We know it is. We see a lot of truck traffic on it. We've discussed it with some local contract yards and vendors in town that do a lot of trucking. We have good relationships with them. They've, said, yes, we'll tell our drivers, go all the way down Church and use the intersection at 20. We maybe have that conversation every year or two with these 3 or 4 different companies. They advise their drivers, but it's primarily not them. I think it's the GPS coming off of 290, getting on 20 and vice versa. It's got 2 schools on the roadway, as we know. It's a comfortable geometry. Pleasant Street is not. Upper Pleasant has that very sharp horizontal curve. That's difficult to navigate just in a couple pickup trucks or SUVs. It's certainly not a comfortable drive for a tractor trailer. This would be a location that I would recommend doing traffic counts in 24 on Lincoln Street and Pleasant to capture what the numbers are and confirm that we meet the thresholds.
Okay, so there's been no previous study done on this one.
No.
Okay.
We can't do traffic counts in the winter.
Right.
It doesn't work good with plowing.
Any comments from members? Rachel.
I have a question. Because Lincoln Street does have 2 schools on it, when we're looking at alternate routes, are there other factors that are taken into consideration, because it's sort of a vulnerable area like that, or is it strictly a quantitative decision?
It's purely analytical.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if it's a hospital, school, residential zone, or industrial zone. It's just data driven.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Brian.
I'm going to ask a stupid question. What is the Jake brake restriction? Is that strictly a noise thing, basically, or?
Yes. Yep. That's a compression brake. It's actually pretty cool. It reverses the operations of the valves in a diesel engine. So your intake valve turns into an exhaust valve and vice versa. It's when the tractor trailer, up, 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 up. When you hear that, that's a Jake brake. You're not allowed to say Jake brake. That's it's a Jacob engine brake, compression brake. It's a proprietary term. So now it's referred to as a compression brake or an engine brake.
Jacob.
You have that on Bartlett Street. When you come off of 20, you'll see a sign right there that says no engine braking.
Is that something that, and I'm guessing that doesn't have the same number of restrictions on it that the heavy commercial vehicle exceptions do?
Nope, it's totally locally driven. The town adopted, I forget what town meeting it was, Bill. Was it one of the outdoor ones?
Yeah, I think it was the outdoor one, 2019 maybe.
Yeah, it's one of the COVID ones we had over at Algonquin. And then once it was adopted, the request goes into the select board, and they can enact that in the local bylaws.
Thank you.
Yeah. If this was to fail, if the committee advises us to do the traffic counts on Lincoln Street, if it was to fail with the percentages and thresholds, then we could do a Jake brake, compression brake exclusion.
Right, because you don't need the compression brake if there's no heavy vehicles on the road.
Right.
Okay.
You want me to do
Any
the
more?
request accounts on Lincoln and Pleasant?
I think for any of these, we're going to leave the process right now as just, we'll give it some time to think about it, and maybe we'll bring them up in the next meeting, and that's
Okay.
when we'll take our votes and, make recommendations.
Yep.
If that's okay with everyone else.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like
Okay.
to see the studies that Scott is going to send us,
Right.
especially on the other two. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I guess the next one is School Street Sidewalk Bridge condition.
So on the short section of School Street between Brigham and Juniper Hill, Juniper Brook in the back, there's a bridge that goes over I think it's the Hop Brook, and that bridge has a sidewalk on it. As with a lot of Mass DOT bridges, when you put a bridge in, you put a sidewalk in, regardless of if there's a sidewalk on the beginning or the end of it. You just put the sidewalk in case there's one in the future. That's the same case on Whitney Street underneath 290. There's a sidewalk on one side of Whitney Street that doesn't go anywhere. So that's the case here on this bridge. It's over by Ellsworth Tree Farm, and the recent Mass DOT bridge inspection found that the carrier beams for the sidewalk only, which are steel, the web is rusted all the way through. So there is no more web. I-beam, the web is the middle, flanges are top and bottom. So the middle part, which is kind of important, is gone. So they ordered us like literally in the field on the cell phone, on my cell phone, saying close the sidewalk. So we've closed the sidewalk. There is no pedestrian access to it now. It didn't go anywhere or come from anywhere really, as far as sidewalk connectivity. But it is under the mission statement of, pedestrian access in the community for this committee. So I wanted you to be aware that we have closed that sidewalk.
Okay. And you said that there's no sidewalk on either side of that, right?
Correct.
And is that Mass DOT's responsibility to repair that going forward, or is that ours?
That's our bridge.
That's the town's. Okay.
Yep.
One of the ones that the town owns.
Yep.
Of course, right?
Yep. Mass DOT comes out and tells us when we have to fix it and orders us to fix it or close it. So,
right.
The good news is the vehicle portion of it is not steel beam; it's concrete beam, and they're in good shape.
Okay. Any questions?
Is it like, do a lot of people use it, or?
Not really. There's pedestrians. The resident who brought it to our attention uses it. Well, she brought it to our attention after we close it, that we close it rapidly with barrels and cones, and we told her we're going to do it a little more, aesthetically pleasing. But for now, we have to close it. So pedestrians will use it so they don't have to walk between the bridge rails, because it's a narrow bridge. But it's a clear line of sight in both directions, and it's not a high-speed road. Nobody's speeding down there. It's not like it's Brigham where the double culverts are over by the golf course, where people are kind of driving a little bit quicker. So I don't have a concern with pedestrian going over the very short section of bridge. It's a clear line of sight.
Kate.
So with that, I think you kind of already answered my question, but I was wondering, is there any room that's not in the lane of travel for people to cross over the bridge?
No.
They're in the road.
My guess is, like, if you're driving, out of Juniper Brook neighborhood and you see a pickup truck coming the other way, you're probably going to brake and let that truck go over that bridge first and then go, because it's pretty narrow. It's probably a 16-foot cross section at best. To put it in perspective, a parking space is 8 feet. So most people don't want to, cross that bridge with 2 trucks at the same time. And it's a very clear line of sight. You can see in both directions, wide open.
Do we know what the cost would be to repair the sidewalk bridge?
I don't know if we could without replacing the main bridge or doing some substantial geometric changes, because they're connected. So we
Okay.
likely have to put a new bridge adjacent to the existing, build out the abutments, build out the approaches, and probably encroach on the river a bit. So anything's feasible because I'm a civil engineer. You throw enough money at it and I can do it. But there's better places to put the money.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Chris.
That was part of my question, as well as if there was a dollar value to it. And what about like car traffic with the tree farm? Is it?
They don't get a lot of traffic, but their access is before the bridge. All their parking is on our side of the bridge, or away from the neighborhood side of the bridge. There is a utility that is underneath the sidewalk. We have a water main that goes and serves that entire neighborhood. So we are looking into a temporary gantry to get across the waterway to support the water main. In the event that water main was to fail with the sidewalk, we can live without the sidewalk. That neighborhood would not have any drinking water.
Okay. But there's no way to fix the bridge without, or fix the sidewalk. And is there a requirement for us to have a sidewalk there because there's a bridge? No. Okay. Okay. I guess next we go to 264 Whitney Street sidewalk condition.
So this is a common topic that comes up with residents, and I put this on there just so the committee could be aware of some of the requests and reports that come in. It's a sidewalk on Whitney Street. If you're driving up and down Whitney Street, Bill, you might do that occasionally. Take a look at 264. The sidewalk the sidewalk drops away from the road grade substantially. It's undulating due to root growth, but it goes nowhere. It stops at somebody's driveway. It starts nowhere and it goes nowhere. Is it something that can be fixed? Yes, we can take down the road, take down the trees, cut out the roots, repave the sidewalk. But again, it goes to somebody's. It doesn't even reach the driveway. There's like 4 feet of grass before you get to the driveway. So I just wanted the committee to be aware that we have these sidewalk conditions out there. Can they be corrected and addressed? Yes. Do they serve any purpose for the community? Often no, or occasionally no, and that's the case here. So just when you're up and down Whitney Street, take a look at 264. You'll see what we're talking about, the sidewalk.
Yeah, no, I'll say that I have the same sidewalk in front of my house, and we actually, a few of the neighbors here actually cleared them away, cleared all the overgrowth and everything, but a few haven't. And so it was interesting. The other day, I was sitting and I looked out my front window and I saw somebody on a bike go down the sidewalk in front of my house, and then have to stop and grab his bike and walk up the hill to the roadway and then continue on his bike, because the house next to me actually built a build out on their driveway that completely blocks the sidewalk, and they have not, they're not one of the ones that uncovered it. So
they have the like landscape timber wall that has a little parking space or something
yes.
up top. Another
Yep.
one.
Yep. So, but yeah, those are all over Whitney Street. Are those in any other area? I'm just curious.
We have other locations. For a little while, the planning board was having businesses put sidewalks in along their frontages. That Hillside Grill,
Yes.
they have a sidewalk that goes nowhere.
Yeah.
Right.
They're around. It makes sense in some neighborhoods to have connectivity to an adjacent neighborhood. It's just unfortunate when you see it just stop, because putting in sidewalks it's a complicated process. We have that as one of the topics on the traffic safety webpage on how challenging it is to put in sidewalks when it comes to drainage, utilities, easements, grading. It's not easy.
Right. Any other members? Okay. Applefest Street Fair accessibility.
So we had a resident reach out with concern about wheelchair accessibility to the street fair at Applefest. Apparently, there were some vendors who put up their wares and their tables and whatnot along accessible routes. A handicap parking space was partly impeded upon by a vendor. This event, the street fair, is a private event. It's held by a private entity, not the town. But you know, as the committee, and these are just kind of FYI agenda items. You know, when you go to community events and you see things like somebody setting up a table at a wheelchair ramp, or you know, unloading their van and leaving the van next to the handicap space, those don't go unseen by residents who have that need. So when I try to reach out to people and just educate them that, you know, it's not just wheelchairs, it's baby strollers, it's, you know, walkers, it's what have you, people with young kids who are learning how to walk. So, you know, it came up and it went to the select board. It came to us and I informed them of this, but it's part of the accessibility and livability of the community. So I thought it would be good for the committee to be aware of it.
Okay. Yeah, I know that they're trying to get more and more things downtown. So especially with the common there and everything else. So go ahead, Kate.
So I know this is a private event, but is there something that can be done to notify whoever is managing this private event that cannot happen? I mean, I
Yeah,
think it's extremely important that people who have extra needs, I'll say, have the same access as everybody else.
yeah. Unfortunately, it's usually in hindsight. You know, after the fact. I mean, I had mentioned it to this entity afterwards. Just keep an eye on your vendors. But you know, in my community, I live in Grafton. In my community, when I see things like that happen, I'll walk up and say, "Hey, you mind scooching over here a little bit, politely?" And you guys are on the committee, and you know, it's important that we're all knowledgeable about what the needs are, and to try to better things for everybody. So, yeah, we let them know afterwards, though.
So those street fair sections where the vendors put their tents are all mapped out pretty significantly. I'm sure you know that.
Yep.
And the no parking signs and those things. I know maybe up until the last few years where they didn't prefer such a police presence. I don't know if that has changed things, but I think it would just be important to maybe have access to that map and just make sure that it's something that we can be cognizant of ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that is town owned property, right? That they're using. It's just that it's not a town recreation item or town recreation Applefest, right?
Right. Yep.
So maybe even just informing them in, you know, in what's sent to them as part of the permit process, right? Please don't, you know, set up your tents or wares or have your vendors set up in accessibility spots.
That's a good point, Mr. Chairman. They go before the board every year to close Blake Street for this event, as does, I think it's the community affairs for the tree lighting. So we can certainly add that to the select board's commentary.
That would be great. Any other members? Okay. The next one is Church Street guardrail request at Colby.
So this one came to us from a resident and through the select board. If we've all driven on Church Street heading out of town, as you take that left horizontal curve on Church Street after Colby, just as you enter the curve, you see a utility pole staring right at you. It's not a super elevated curve. It's normal crown, which means it's like this, not like that. So it pushes you toward that pole. That pole was taken out a couple of months ago. Had a lot of impacts for electrical and communication throughout downtown. So somebody asked, why don't we put a guardrail in front of it? Well, there's warrants that need to be met for guardrails. Guardrails are deflective; they're not preventive, meaning they're meant to bend and give. They're not walls. So you need certain distance between the roadway edge, travel way, and the face of the guardrail. And then you need certain distance between the face of the guardrail and the obstruction. That pole is probably 6 inches from the pavement. So there's there's a sidewalk behind it. There's absolutely no room or geometric allowance to get a guardrail in front of that pole. There are other requirements with isolated guardrails. They're dangerous. Having guardrails in one spot for one specific issue is dangerous because they're unexpected by drivers. Long guardrails for like roadside shoulder protections, those are more expected by drivers, but they have different end treatment requirements than this does. So again, this location, it won't fit a guardrail. But somebody asked, and we can research federal highway, Mass DOT. There's a lot of other requirements that need to be met, but it won't fit here.
Okay. Yeah, and I know from an accident in front of my house back in June that a guardrail got taken out. That they don't really stop vehicles, right? If a vehicle's heading for a guardrail, it's going to take out the guardrail.
That's what it's for.
Yeah, it's just to slow it down a little bit. I guess I'll open it up to members first. Go ahead, Brian.
Scott, what problem was the guardrail trying to solve? This sounds like a stupid question. Is it, hey, drivers, there's a thing here that you should avoid, or people keep crashing into this pole, we need to protect it from getting crashed into and taking out the power downtown?
It's the former. Hey, driver, don't hit the pole.
Is it a nighttime issue? Could we put a bunch of reflectors on it?
No, it's just a geometric issue. Next time you're driving up Church Street, just kind of feel where your car goes. When you're on a normal crown, 2% cross slope, take your hands off the wheel, your car drives to the gutter. That's just what it does because it's on a cross slope. That's what that curve is. And it naturally if you take your hands off the wheel, you're going to go right in that pole. It's been hit several times. So we have advanced warning signs, a curve sign. We could put a reflector on it, but this was broad daylight. This was like 8 in the morning. Somebody was going to work and just smacked into it.
Okay, thank you.
Rachel.
Okay, I'm going to ask the stupid question. We can't move the pole?
No.
You can't the pole? Okay. Okay.
Pole design is odd. Chris, you're familiar with it. You move a utility pole 2 feet and you're moving 4 other utility poles because they have to be dead on line. Otherwise, they need strain resistance and guy wires, and it's not easy.
Yeah, it becomes very expensive, and the domino effect of it is amazing what you can do. And there's different, transformers and stuff like that. Once you start getting into those, then it really becomes a major headache, and it becomes a utility project with a roadway attached to it.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and one of the things we've bounced around in the planning board a few times is, requiring any new, like right now in any new subdivision, there are no poles, right? All the wiring has to go under the ground, right? And so trying to do that throughout the town, but that's a huge project. But it sort of prevents this as well. There's no pole to hit.
And I think, like Scott said too, there's a lot of criteria that goes behind guardrail. It's not a system that you just hit and it sends you away. It's there. It deflects. It breaks, and if it's too short of a run, it can be more of a hazard. if nothing was there.
Right.
So there's a lot of different criteria that need to be met with it.
Any other comment? Okay. Another guardrail request for Crawford Street.
So we installed a guardrail recently on Crawford Street. It was a replacement. So we have a lot of guardrail. A lot of communities have this guardrails that are non-compliant. Planning board, pre-existing non-conforming.
Mhm.
They were put in a long time ago. Concrete posts, rebar, wire, tension wire. They're deteriorated, almost non-existent. We have an inventory of all of our guardrails in town and their conditions and their materials. We can replace a pre-existing non-conforming guardrail with new guardrail without violating any rules or regulations. We're just replacing something with new. Which is what we did on Crawford Street. So there was an old guardrail there, we replaced it. There are sections on Crawford Street that certainly warrant guardrail. Between like on the West Main Street side, as you approach the Howard Street, the Crawford Street well, there's a DCR property on the right-hand side. There's a significant slope right there. Absolutely warrants a guardrail. There's no shoulder. There's zero shoulder. So you need to have a certain distance between the travel lane and the face of guardrail. So that pushes it off a few feet. And then a few feet off, the ground is about 6 feet down. So you need to build that shoulder out to have adequate support for the guardrail posts. When you build the shoulder out, you're encroaching on DCR land. You're encroaching on their floodplain. You're filling in a wetland. You're now going from a guardrail installation at $50 a foot to an embankment construction project that requires Army Corps permitting and compensatory flood storage mitigation. So, you drive around, you look, you say there should be a guardrail there, yes, but there are substantial needs to support a guardrail. We've had a request there several times. Got a lot of emails saying, thanks for the guardrail. Didn't exactly put it where you wanted it, but we put it up.
It's there.
So there are needs. When you look at it, on Ridge Road, there's a lot of slopes opposite the housing, the residential side, and it's a narrow road and it's dangerous. There is an adequate shoulder there for guardrail. When you see a state highway, you're driving on a state highway, Route 20, and you see guardrails, look at what the shoulder looks like there. There's a nice long, flat section of land, 4 to 6 feet wide, and then it slopes off. If we don't have that, you can't fit it. So again, this was more of a, FYI, we did something, but this is why we can't do other things.
Right. And did you say you had a list of, where you have guardrails and where they might need to be replaced?
Yes. Every other year, we have our pavement management consultant drive the entire town, update our pavement conditions, and every other year we have them grab some other piece of data. Curb material condition, guardrail material condition, location, pavement markings, like whatever, just so we can build our database over the years. We did a guardrail inventory in 2016, probably due for an update, but we have that all that data.
It might be interesting to look at as well.
Be happy to share it.
Any other member comments?
I just want to add that I think this conversation, for example, is really how this committee is going to benefit the town, because I wonder how many people would drive by a place like that and say there should be a guardrail. But being able to understand what goes into that and why it's possible, or in that case, in both situations, not possible, I think could help to alleviate a lot of concerns just with communication and understanding. So that helped me a lot. I didn't know anything about the guardrails and the shoulder. So thank you.
Thank you. I hope it does. I certainly do.
It becomes an issue. It's called the shy line. And I think a good example of it is that tree on Hudson Street. When you're driving towards Route 20, it's an object that's there, and it kind of makes you shy away from driving on your side of the road. And you see it a lot where people cross over the yellow center line, and it kind of becomes a safety hazard more than it did any benefit. In this case, guardrail right at the edge of the roadway.
Yeah, no, Kate, and I completely agree with what you're saying, right? This is a learning experience, and I think having Scott's expertise out here in the public realm, explaining all this stuff to us, we can refer back to this later, and the public can refer back to this later and say, oh well, maybe that's why we can't do this here, or oh, we need more money. Well, maybe we'll approve a little bit more money to get this project done, right? And here's why.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think before this committee, it was almost like what you did, Scott, was like this black box. You submitted a request and you didn't always know the status or what was happening. So I think this being more transparent and more educational will hopefully help your job too.
Oh, speed bumps. I know I see these going up in Sudbury all the time.
I got a feeling the speed bump conversation may be a little bit longer than the other two. Mr. Chairman, do you mind if we cut to the other two first
Sure.
and get back?
Yep. So the Lyman Street horizontal curve.
Yeah. So Del Webb was recently constructed over on Lyman Street in Westboro at the old State Hospital, a very large 55 and older development. A resident of that development reached out to us and asked for a blind driveway sign or a sharp curve sign to be installed. They asked Westboro as well to install those signs. So the proper process is you go out there, you determine what the speed limit is by the signage or by the area. I believe in that area is one direction is 40, the other one's 35. You go through the green book, the AASHTO site distance book. You see what movement are you doing when you're exiting. Are you going right? Are you going left? Which direction are you looking? And what length is required for clear line of sight in order to make that move safely? So that's the process we go through. Went through it here. Doesn't warrant the signage. Doesn't warrant a blind drive sign or a sharp curve sign. Don't want to put up signs that are not legally warranted in accordance with AASHTO or MUTCD. You end up with sign clutter, and then you end up with liability issues because you're just falsely identifying hazards that don't exist. So that's the process when people request signs. It's not a quick one. It takes the two of us to go out there. You got to measure your distance. You got to stand at the stop bar where the driver's seat is. You've got to go to the center of the lane. You've got to, Chris, you're familiar with the process in order to determine adequate sight distance. Bill, you're familiar with sight distances as well, obviously on the planning board. Standards of the sight distance requirements are based on what the approaching speeds are and what the movement is. Are you going straight across? Are you taking a left? Are you taking a right? And there are different distances depending on which direction you're looking in. And then there's also the distances for the drivers. Do they have adequate stopping distance in order to stop or to slow? So there's a lot of considerations when somebody just says, hey, can I have a sign?
Right. Okay. Thank you. Brian.
Thanks. How much did it miss by? That's
A lot.
Oh, okay. Because if
Yeah.
the speed limit is 45 and people are going 55, that's obviously going to change.
Yeah, it's my mistake. Yeah, we have 445 feet of sight line, and it requires a little over 300. So
Good distance. That's a good. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
No, I think that's important context. As we said.
One of the
Okay,
issues with sight distance now is, you look in the left direction, it's a 35 mile an hour speed limit, and you need to have 335 feet of sight distance. Well, the Acura is coming at you at 58. So, that's not that's not considered when we do our calculations. It's based on people obeying the law.
Right. Any other member comments? Okay. Let's see. Stop sign request at Thoreau Road.
So we get these a lot. Northgate neighborhood has frequent requests for this. That's this case here. There are, again, warrants that are required to be met for a stop sign installation. They're identified clearly in the MUTCD. In this case, it's not warranted. I can give you a brief summary of, in general, what those warrants are. You got to have a lot of traffic, over 600 average daily trips. Oh, I'm over 6,000. We're nowhere near there. You're not going to get anywhere near 6,000 in Northgate. If there's a sight line issue, line of sight you can't see, so you have to stop. Is there an obvious major and minor? Allen Street would be a minor, Hudson Street a major at that four-way. Or is it a frequent accident location that would be averted by a stop sign? So that would be a crossing accident, not rear ends. You'd have to have 3 in a year or 5 over 2 years. None of those criteria are met here. Stop sign installation is under the jurisdiction of the board of the select board. But as a professional engineer, we make our recommendations based on hard data and rules and regulations, and that it is not warranted in this location.
Okay. Rachel.
Those four-way stop signs in residential neighborhoods with no stop sign in either direction are so frustrating. And so I'm just sort of the voice of the resident here. If you're driving in a residential neighborhood and there's a four-way intersection with no stop sign, I didn't grow up here. That's very new to me. Is that a Mass DOT that's unique to Massachusetts? Because it just seems like a very proactive thing to put a couple stop signs in a residential neighborhood so people know to stop. Because when I'm driving in a new neighborhood and I see that, I assume I have the right of way and the other person's going to stop. So anyway, just venting. But it is a concern. And when I was carpooling and running in different neighborhoods, I would run across that a lot, and it concerns me. As having kids that are new drivers and things like that, they may not automatically stop at an intersection like that if they don't see a stop sign. So just to vent publicly, sorry.
Okay. Brian.
Just real quick to the last point. I'm looking at the map real quick. I don't think Thoreau and Emerson is a four-way stop, is it?
No.
To me, like it's basically a glorified right turn with a little bit of dead end right past it.
Yeah, it's a T intersection. We just paved both those roads. And yeah, one of the legs of the T I think it serves like 2 houses or 3 houses.
No. Thanks.
Yep.
Kate.
Yeah, I think Brian pretty much covered it, but I had taken a look at this intersection and I can definitely appreciate what Rachel is saying, and that's happened to me before in town as well. And I think that where it is a four-way intersection and, a study might have different results, this one in particular is, I would be surprised if that had met the criteria, because it really is just 2 houses.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was confusing it with another intersection in that neighborhood, so I apologize for venting with them.
No.
When it didn't apply.
It can be confusing.
So when these requests come in, similar to the site distance issue, we'll go out and look at it, determine the site distance. Obviously, we're familiar with the roads. Is there a major and a minor? We're familiar with what the approximate traffic load is. Is it, we're nowhere near 6,000 ADT. And then I reach out to the police department. So what are the accidents here? We have access to the police department's accident database, and it tells you what the accident is. Is it a rear ender? Is it somebody hitting a pole in foul weather? Is it a crossing accident? And that would be a stop sign preventable accident, a crossing accident.
Yeah, I mean that whole neighborhood is actually filled with those type of intersections, right? I remember I'm looking it up on my map here. Emerson and Longfellow, there's no stop sign there, right? And so I've gone like 4 or 5 times down that and just wondered, where's the stop? Now I know that there's no other traffic coming because there's not a lot of traffic on those roads, but just the confusion of, and I think up in Indian Meadow, there's probably a few of them up there as well.
Yep.
So I think this might be something that we may need to, we may want to take a better look at this over some of the other items, because I think, confusing intersections just causes confusion, right? Even if there's limited traffic, there still should be some type of signage to say, these are the ones that stop and these are the ones that don't. Because like coming off of Emerson onto Longfellow, you don't know that Longfellow is actually the one that goes across, right? You have no idea that it looks like it's 3 streets coming into one big circle.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of, as Scott outlined, there's a lot of standards that do need to be met, because, someone is putting their license us there when they are directing someone to put any type of traffic control down. So it does become a liability issue too, in the same sense.
Yeah, but I mean, especially in this issue, right? So Emerson coming down, that Emerson is where you're supposed to stop coming onto Longfellow, right? But there's nothing telling you that even the configuration of the roadway doesn't tell you that, right? So, there's got to be some way for us to look at that as well. If there isn't, there isn't, but I think that a little bit more investigation from that point of view.
We'll look through the MUTCD manual and see if there's flexibility in there. Chris is right. If the recommendation comes from a professional engineer indicating that, you should put a stop sign here and it doesn't meet the warrant and there's a rear end accident there and somebody gets hurt, that could be a very substantial problem for whoever recommended that, and if it's not warranted.
Yeah, but I would think the reverse would be true as well. If there is an accident because there was no stop sign there, then the town may be liable for not putting a stop sign, right? So I would be concerned of the other end of that as well.
So you're saying like if the study was done and they recommended the stop sign, but there was no stop sign put in?
No, even if we say we don't need a stop sign there, right? And there's an accident and it's caused by not having a stop sign, and the person, let's say Emerson and Longfellow, right? Somebody comes down Emerson, there's no stop sign, so there's nothing that says that they have to stop, and they run into somebody going along Longfellow, right? Whose fault is it? There's nothing that says that person needs to stop. There's nothing telling that vehicle. It's sort of like having a 4-way intersection with 4 green lights, right? You're relying on the driver's decision to know which one they have to stop at.
Right.
So
At the same time, I think the town would have a defense in that hypothetical to point to the regulations and say, look, we did our due diligence. We looked at the regulations. The regulations said we don't need a stop sign there.
Right. I completely agree. We would probably be exonerated in the end, but you still have that somebody got hurt.
Now that we're talking about Emerson and Longfellow, we should probably consider looking into that a little further.
We'll look through the MUTCD manual and see the way that manual is written is it has requirements, and then it has recommendations, and it has portions of it indicating judgment. So we'll take a look at it and see what there is.
Okay.
We'll talk to the next one.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, I just pulled it up on Google Maps, and there's a lot of pavement there.
Yeah, exactly. And so without a stop sign, it's real confusing when you come down there, right? When you come down Emerson, it's a big circle, is really what it is. So, I mean, maybe it needs to be redesigned. I don't know. Maybe that's part of it. But
You probably
okay,
fit a little mini roundabout in there, right, Scott?
Oh yeah, sure. A vegetated island.
at a rotary, yeah.
Yeah,
Massachusetts loves rotaries.
yep.
Who doesn't love green space if it's vegetated?
Yeah. Okay, so now we can go back to the speed bumps.
Yep. So we've received requests for consideration of speed bumps, speed humps, speed tables. Quickly, speed bump is the type of thing you see in a parking lot of the supermarket. A speed hump is something you'd see on a maybe a neighborhood road or an access road that goes between two shopping centers. They're wider. They're generally 10, 12, 14 feet wide. And then speed tables, which a speed table can accommodate both axles of a vehicle. So that's in general terms what the three components are. Uh, speed humps and tables are the only things that would actually be of an option on a public way. Speed bumps are not. There are criteria for installation of speed humps. In general terms, the goal of a speed hump is to mitigate traffic down to a speed of 15 to 25 miles an hour. So the only locations in general that they're used is where the posted speed limit is 25. You'll see some in 30 mile an hour. You'll see speed humps put in places they absolutely do not belong. Some towns will just do what they want, where they want, when they want. Other towns have things well thought out. You go through Cambridge, you go around the parks and the schools. Most of their crosswalks are speed tables. They're elevated. Both axles fit on it. It's a very comfortable drive, but you're going down a 16-foot wide road with granite curbing on both sides and 100-year oaks. You're not going over 20 miles an hour. But we've had requests for these. Some of the concerns that we've considered are, one, snow removal. It's very uncomfortable for plowing. It's problematic for the equipment. It beats up the equipment, literally. Another concern is regarding emergency routing. You would not want to put a speed table on a emergency egress route from a neighborhood. Public safety generally is not too fond of these. If there's an ambulance getting to your house due to an emergency, having that ambulance decelerate to 15 miles an hour all the way through your neighborhood to get to your house is probably not what you want. It is very loud. Speed tables are very loud. Speed humps are very loud. We talked about the sound of landscape trucks with their trailers bouncing down the road when we're talking about Rice Ave. These are very loud. Any equipment in the back of a truck or a dump truck, not necessarily a tractor trailer, but a dump truck, that makes a lot of noise when it goes over these. So putting them in residential areas is difficult. They also introduce a drainage issue. If you have a wide roadway and you can get a speed hump in there and still have clear gutter space for water, for drainage to run through, that works. If it's a country road where the stormwater runs right off the shoulder, that works. If it's narrow and you've got curbs, you don't have enough room to get drainage through. So there's a lot of different things to think about, and it's beyond the engineering piece. There's a policy decision associated with it, I think.
Okay, thank you. Chris.
Thanks. I've seen this a lot in neighborhoods in Worcester too. They're almost like temporary ones that kind of have built-in little notches for drainage. Is that something we might be able to consider in some of these areas? I know, in every area is not applicable, but that way I feel like typically these issues with speeding vehicles are typically in the warmer months versus I know there are some crazy people in the winter months, but it's typically seen in the winter months, I mean, in the summer months, excuse me, where a lot more people out and about driving, better weather, and different things. Is that something, we could consider because it can be taken out during the winter months when things may not be as hectic, or there's an impending snowstorm?
It implementation of something like this would probably warrant a pilot program in the event this committee and the select board were in favor of trying something. Something such as what Chris suggested, you put in some temporary ones that can be removed, see how it works operationally, see if it helps out with the traffic concerns. For example, this one's on Winter Street. We would have put them on Winter Street, and every truck that goes down there drives the neighbors crazy because everything's rattling around. It's not a permanent installation. We didn't do any damage to the road. It wasn't a substantial cost. There are other traffic calming measures at other roadways that could be done. Bump outs with tree plantings that aren't pleasant for plowing either. But it's another traffic calming mechanism. We were talking earlier about how you generally drive slow when you see things narrow. There are other mechanisms for traffic calming, but I'm in favor of trying a pilot test to see if things will work out.
I think it'd be good to identify some areas where we can pilot those and see, how it does from that traffic calming standpoint.
I can't believe people speed on Winter. I mean, that's like a driveway. You got common drives, Bill, the planning board, that are wider than Winter Street.
Yeah. I see it on Howard as well, right? Going, that back road up, or the back way up by Howard. Okay. Any other member comments? Thank you, Chris. Okay. That's our list, as it is right now. What I would say is, we definitely want to start pointing people towards these meetings. So I know, once this meeting is posted, I'm going to put it out on social media, encourage everyone to do the same, and sort of, let's see if we can start getting people to, review this stuff, and, we can make some really smart decisions for the town. With that being said, Scott, there's a item here for the traffic safety webpage.
Yep, we talked about modifications to the webpage a little bit. I believe the first meeting, some committee members weren't fully versed on what the webpage has. I did confirm with Megan. We did some email testing with it, right?
Yes. Yep. So all the emails are coming to you and I think the police department as well.
Okay. So before there was like if you picked the traffic enforcement one, it only went to PD. If you picked like a crosswalk concern, it only went to us. It now goes to both. And again, we'll continue updating it on new topics that come up. You'll see some of the dates of the inquiries are old because there's only so many times I can post how you get a truck exclusion. It's on there. The information doesn't change. So we'll respond to residents with that data and direct them to the page. So going forward, we'll continue to direct them to the page for information and for submissions, and also indicate that this committee is active, and be aware that here is a link to the committee as well.
Okay. Rachel.
So the list of items on the agenda, were they all submitted through the web form, or did people call you or email you directly? Are people using that to submit their requests, or are they doing it other ways?
All over. Some people just go right to the DPW page and hit the DPW email link. Others drill into the traffic safety page. Others we've communicated in the past. They send it to the DPW email directly. I've got relationships with a lot of the residents. They email me directly. Some go through the select board. Some go to the town administrator's office, the planner. Planning board gets some, and then they come to me. So anybody that is at northborough.ma.us is open and receiving these things.
Okay.
But we have been keeping track of everything since the last meeting, and keeping, as much as we can, like their contact information, letting them know that we're going to be putting it on the agenda, and that, their comments are going to be, brought before the committee, and then that we would get back to them with, one way or another. So
Thank you.
Brian,
Nope, we're good.
you're good. Okay. Kate.
Oh,
Should we be encouraging people to participate in the meeting, attend the meeting, if they're submitting certain requests? That's part one of my question.
We let them know that it'll be on the agenda for the meeting. We don't have the bandwidth to follow up with every single resident who reaches out to us to remind them, hey, the meeting is coming up. We let them know it's going to be on the Traffic Safety Committee meeting. They meet the second Tuesday of every month. It'll be on the agenda. If it's important to them, they'll attend. I encourage them to go to the traffic safety webpage. There's a lot of information there. Rachel, you were involved when we first launched that page. So there's a lot of this information is there. Sidewalk requests. There's a bunch of information about sidewalk requests. Same thing with the stop signs and truck exclusions.
Okay. The other thing I was curious is if there are a lot of posts on Facebook in the Northborough groups about different things.
well,
They're always encouraged to go to the traffic safety website. Mitch does a great job of responding to literally everything I've ever seen on a Northborough page with like the precise educational information for the person. If we see something like that, should we let you know and we can add it to the agenda? Or should we just be telling that person, hey, you should go to the website and submit that?
I would suggest you direct them to the website.
yeah.
We don't engage we don't engage in the social media platform. It can turn into a wormhole that doesn't lend itself to productivity on the job. So yeah, if it's critical to them, there's a lot of information on the webpage. They get it to us. We respond quickly. We got your email. Thank you. If it's an easy response that can be gotten back to quickly, we do. If it warrants the agenda, we let them know. That would be the best way to communicate.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would highly agree with that, right? We should be pointing them to the DPW site. Scott, what I'd like to do is, I know we have a town site now which has, our agenda listed, our calendar and everything else. I'd like to get, some our mission statement that we had come up with up there, and then put all of the links to your DPW site, including for submittals.
Okay.
So that way, we can direct them as committee members. We can direct them to our committee site, which then would, they could forward off to wherever they need to go from there.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brian.
okay. Now I have a real question. From my experience with Facebook groups in the past and social media generally, my guess is that a lot of the concerns being raised tend to be repetitive and probably have been addressed on the rather extensive DPW page. And in fact, so extensive, I'm wondering if we could make it put some sort of map so that people could look at an intersection and say, oh, I wish there was someone asked about a guardrail here already.
So I will speak to, a couple of things that we got this week were actually things that had already been addressed, and it was easy to just kind of forward the response that we already had and then send them to the web page. And I think that's the same for some of the things that come up in the Facebook page as well, which is why it would be important to direct them directly to us so that we can either inform them or make the decision to add it to the agenda if we think that it's, something that's new and needs to be brought up to the committee.
Right. And I suspect that we have enough of a backlog of these type of requests that we're not going to be desperately reaching out to other people for new stuff.
Right.
We'll load you up. Don't worry.
Yeah. Can't wait.
Well, and I will say, Brian, to that comment, right? One of the items, in fact, the next item is public comment, right? So that's for any items that weren't on the agenda.
Right.
We do sort of want to limit those because, again, we're trying to limit. We don't want so many things on the agenda that we're gonna, I've done planning board meetings until midnight, right? It's not fun. And so, starting a meeting at 6:30 and going till midnight is not something that we want to get in the habit of doing. So we do sort of want to limit, how many per meeting we go through. But that's going to be a learning, thing for us. We've got to determine how many we can get through in a single meeting. Maybe we need to do two a month for a little while until we get, through, what the town needs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, Rachel.
So to Kate's point about the Facebook posts, a lot of the posts that have been coming up, and Kate actually posted something about a traffic study on Route 20 that was very educational for me, and I'm sure people that were reading the post. A lot of people have issues with Route 20, the Lincoln Street and Route 20, and where White Cliffs is with Maple, Brigham, and Route 20. And so I know the sort of road answer is it's a state highway, we don't have a lot of control over it. Are there things that we can be doing for those sort of troublesome intersections, or do we really have no control over it because it's a state highway? Can we, ask the state to just, get the ball rolling in terms of, improvements on those intersections? What's the process for that?
We've received inquiries about Lincoln Street and Chesterfield and West Main Street several times. The same answer has always been given back to us from DOT. No, doesn't warrant it. They look through the analysis, very similar to the analysis that we've described here tonight, but DOT does it with their own data. And there's really no wavering there. The crosswalk over by White Cliffs, that's been a topic for many years about getting some additional protective measures there. That answer has always been no. They look through the data and see that it's not a high crash zone. There's no warrant or for additional protective measures there. We ask every few years, get the same answer. I know the intersection, the Highway Safety Improvement Program for hazardous intersections has specific data and criteria to be met for the state to consider reconfiguring. Brigham, Maple, and Main Street Route 20 have not met that yet. It's a terrible intersection, absolutely is. Mass DOT has their list, and they update it, I don't know, annually. I think Chris, the Bartlett and Main Street was on it for a couple of years. Rachel, you remember when we did the the roadway safety audit? When we started the audit, it was on it. By the time the audit was done, it was off. Then when you look at that intersection, the crash data, almost all of it was solar glare rear ends. There was very little turning movement accidents. It was mostly people in the morning on Route 20 heading east, bumping into each other from solar glare. Just what it was. So we can request DOT repeatedly to look at things, and they do the same thing we do. They go through the data, and if it's not supported, it's no. We've had residents reach out to the our legislative bodies here, both in the Senate and the House, asking for help, and they falls on dead ears as well.
Okay, good to know. Not the answer I wanted, but I get it.
Sorry, hit the no button again.
No, I know. That's all right.
Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks. Brian, to your point, I think it's Westboro has a really cool interactive map that
don't do that, 'cause now I'm gonna want it.
it's cool, but again, it costs money because there's probably a consultant that needs to come on board, maintain it, and put it all together. But it is pretty cool to take a look at. So it's something that I've definitely brought up. I think I brought it up when we were doing the study for that. And then the second part, Scott, is there anything, I guess, from your standpoint that the committee can do as far as funding mechanisms between, the different programs that the DOT has that we can help alleviate some of the pressure off of you and Megan?
No, getting projects on the tip is a lifelong experience. One of the challenges of the traffic improvement program, one of the challenges with that is the design survey and land takings are all funded locally before the state comes in and funds the construction. And now, and Chris, you're familiar with now when you try to get on the tip, there needs to be some other component other than just, I want this road better. There needs to be some economic development. There needs to be some safety protocols. There needs to be some connectivity, green, to something that gives it a few extra check boxes taken care of. Spreading the word, this committee spreading the word about and educating the residents through Facebook about our webpage and generally what we discussed and what we continue to discuss as we go forward is a huge help. We say the same thing frequently because the same requests come up and you reevaluate different locations, but it's still the same analysis. I wish there was a way to get DOT to fix Maple and Brigham and Maine. I just can't. I mean, I would like them to square up Chesterfield and Lincoln and put a actual traffic signal there.
Oh, yeah. Instead
They
of the
won't.
pedestrian one? No.
Yeah, they just won't. So Chris, maybe you can get it going for us.
Probably not until they do something they touch Route 20 is then they'll look at every intersection along the way and they'll fix them while they're there. But a one-off project is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other member comments on this? I guess we'll move on to public comment. I don't think there's anyone from the public in the meeting. So we will be opening those up going forward. So again, if you're listening to this on the YouTube or something like that after the fact, we highly encourage you to come to the meetings and sit in, and this is a learning process for all of us. So I would appreciate that. I think our next meeting we have scheduled is, pull up my calendar real quick here, December 12th.
Yep.
At 6:30. Does that time still work for everybody?
Sure.
Okay. I guess at this point I will take a motion to adjourn.
Before we do, real quick,
Yep.
Scott, you mentioned a number of reports and things. Can you send those out to everybody?
Yep. I'm going to be sending out the commercial vehicle exclusion reports that were done for Summer Street, Rice Ave. I'll also be sending out the guardrail spreadsheet. I'll remind you that it's from 2016 and needs to be updated with more current data. I'm going to look into adding links on the Traffic Safety Committee's website to the DPW's traffic safety page. I'm going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into the MUTCD on stop sign warrants. And just for fun, I'm going to look at Westboro's mapping.
Thank you.
Kate, did you have something else, or
No.
you're good? Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Rachel,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.